Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to another new video. As you know, I've been interviewing a lot of immigrants, and today I have another special friend who I'm gonna interview. So please have patience and stay tuned. So, this is my special friend for today's interview, and we're gonna ask him a couple of questions. So, bro, can you introduce yourself?
Sure, my name's Christopher Glenn. I'm from Perth, Western Australia, and I've been in Japan for probably too long, 18 years maybe now, give or take. Living the life, enjoying the moment, one day as it comes.
Okay, and as you mentioned, you have been in Japan for such a long time.
Yeah.
Do you miss something from back home?
I miss the kebabs. The doner kebabs in Australia are completely out of this world, and Japan tries, but I have to say I really miss the Aussie style kebabs, and probably the free wine tasting in the Swan Valley as well. That experience is something I really miss, plus free lockers at the beaches too.
Okay. Which city do you come from?
Perth. I'm on the southwest part of Western Australia. It's a sunny city. It's pretty laid back, but I guess I was always drawn by the prospects, or drawn by the attraction of Japan in itself.
Yeah, I would like to share that I was in Perth. I stayed in Perth for 1 year. The guys who are watching my video, I don't know if you know that, but I was in Australia for 1 year. I went to the university to study mining, and I was in the same city as my friend is from, Perth, and it's a beautiful city. And the biggest university in Perth is Curtin. I was enrolled in there, and I spent 1 year, and I did enjoy to the fullest while I was there. The only thing which I regretted, which is not a bad thing, is like it was bit humid. It was very similar to India. It gets pretty hot in Perth. Chris, what would you like to say about the weather in Perth?
Oh, the weather in Perth, let me see. Just hope that you've got an air conditioner in your house and there's never a power blackout, because otherwise you are screwed. And recently they seem to have some kind of random power blackout or storm every summer, and when it's 40 degrees and you don't even have the power in your house to even power an electric fan, you might want to hope in those cases you would have a power generator. Yeah, literally you'd be screwed.
Anything particular from Perth which you miss in Japan?
The beaches, being able to go to a white sand beach and within half an hour to 40 minutes by car, being able to do that. Maybe even going to a winery first, having a glass of wine and still being able to legally drive your car, which you can't do in Japan. That's something I would miss.
How about food? Yeah. Any particular food you miss back from Australia which you can't really find in Japan?
Except for the really good doner kebabs. Probably, as you mentioned, the sausage sizzle, which is basically grilling a beef sausage and throwing it into a bun or just with bread and adding a bit of onion, tomato sauce or mustard, and nothing really beats that. And it's kind of a common fundraising thing back in Australia to have a sausage sizzle, especially amongst Boy Scouts or other groups, to raise funds. And seeing sausage sizzles on the weekend, especially outside the hardware store such as Bunnings, it's quite a common sight back home.
Yeah, I do agree with you because, as I mentioned, I stay in Australia, and before Australia, I spent nearly 4 years in New Zealand. And in New Zealand, the culture is very similar to Australia, and we used to have like this very famous cheap store. It was called Warehouse. I don't know if it still exists or not, but every time I do visit the warehouse store, outside of the store, they will have this kind of sausage sizzle kind of thing,
Yeah.
and I did enjoy their sausages. Always bought the sausages, and it was really great. Uh, so let's already we are talking about food. So let's continue about it. So now you are in Japan. What kind of food do you prefer in Japan?
I would have to say yakiniku. I'm a big fan of the Japanese style yakiniku with a grill. Not necessarily having a fan for the smoke above it, but I really like yakiniku. Yeah, yakiniku, tempura, any kind of teppanyaki kind of cuisine. I'm a big fan for all of that.
Okay. So I'm gonna ask you another question. Like a lot of foreigners who come to Japan, I don't know. Most of my viewers are from India. They don't know about this particular dish, but it's called natto. But you know about natto. Do you like natto?
Good God, no. Natto shouldn't even be considered a food. I tried it once and I promised myself to never try it again.
Yeah.
The smell of my taking shoes off at the end of the day in summertime and what they smell like after you take them off is pretty much what natto smells like. You would have that smell fill up the room if you opened up even the smallest packet of it.
You gave a very nice description about natto. But what do you think? Why Japanese people like natto so much?
Not all of Japanese people like natto. The ones from Osaka certainly don't. Um, some reason most of the people I've met from Osaka don't seem to like natto for whatever reason. Maybe it's just to annoy Tokyo people or for something that's a particular fondness in the Tokyo Kanto region.
Okay. So let me ask you, you have been in Japan for a long time. So what do you do for a living in Japan?
I do various things, but these days I introduce myself first and foremost as a writer. I write books, as well, of course, doing another job, such as many of us have to do. But I'd probably say writing's where my main area of interest, you can call it a passion, a trait that was passed to me from my mother and has become active and dormant again over various periods in my life. Probably over the last few years, you could say it's become active again for various reasons, and then into writing. I write a number of books which I publish in Amazon.
If I'm not wrong, I know you are a very good writer, and you specifically write a lot about historical things. And as you are in Japan, if I'm not wrong, do correct me. You were writing something about Japanese history, right?
Yes. I have a number of books on Japanese castles on my Amazon page. I wish I'd brought some pictures before the surprise of today's interview. And I have a novel which I recently published on Toyotomi Hideyoshi. He's quite a fascinating character for a few reasons, which I might go into later. But it's my first ever novel. And I put it up a couple of months ago, in part to honor my mother's memory.
It's great to know that you have a fucking very good talent. I'm sorry to use that abusive word. I'm sorry.
Good.
I'm just too drunk, so it just came out of my mind. But
No problem.
I do appreciate that you have this special talent because it takes a great thing. You need to be very passionate. You need to do a lot of research, and you need to know what you're doing when you're writing something. What made you come back in this industry? Like you mentioned, your mother was a writer and she enjoyed writing. Why do you particularly write about Japanese history?
That's, I guess, a pertinent question. It all dates back to the, I guess, days when I was a university student and I was skipping a class which was not really any great interest to me. I was killing time in the library and I pulled out a video and it was Kagemusha by Kurosawa. And that movie was really the catalyst for the time that I first became interested in the samurai period. It all started out from that film and I gradually built up my interest from that point. It all really began from there.
Okay, so if I'm not wrong, you have already published one of your books.
Yes, it's called Rise of the Monkey. It's on Amazon in both paperback and Kindle versions. Where to begin with the storyline of that one? It's kind of a simple yet complex story. If you have a chance, please get a hold of it.
Okay, I will make sure I'll put a link about his book and where you can buy or where you can read what he has written.
Be awesome.
So please do check out his work. So let's move on to the next topic. So you've been in Japan for a long time. Probably you might have worked in various fields. What do you think about Japanese work culture?
Japanese work culture is very dedicated to, I guess, maybe even excessively so to their company. The company is usually put first and the family second. I think there have been attempts of late to modernize it, but change happens in Japan slowly. It always has, I guess.
Yeah,
Better or worse.
I do agree with you. Like, it's very difficult to bring a quick change in Japanese system. They take a lot of time. Not a lot of time. Like, I think like it will take a decade to change their mentality. But as I mentioned, like I was in Australia too, and I studied in New Zealand. So Australia and New Zealand, they both have very similar work culture, and the social culture is very similar. Everything is quite similar from my perspective. Uh, when you first came to Japan, what was the shocking thing which was very different from your own country?
I guess being constantly surrounded and bombarded by sound of some kind. You, especially in urban centers, never really have a quiet environment, and this is maybe well, something that countries with a high population density could probably relate with. Uh, that was, I guess, also an interesting point as well. Because in Japan, there's never really a dull moment. There's, as with its, as with you saying, it's never quiet, and also there's always something to do.
So probably you have stayed in Japan for a long time. You might have made a lot of friends from different countries. Would you like to share something about what kind of friends or nationalities or something in general about your friends in Japan?
I have friends, I guess, as you said, from all over the place. Um, what unifies what unifies us all, I guess, is hanging out and appreciating what Japan has to offer. Usually over a can or two or three, or that could include craft beer, something stronger as well. Um, Probably most of my friends I've known, most of them a good few years, sometimes longer. Some of them have stayed in Japan, remained in Japan. Others have gone back to their country, and I keep in touch with them through social media.
So, as you were mentioning, like whenever you are among friends, it's obvious we enjoying having a couple of cans of beer or some liquor. How about yourself? What kind of liquor do you prefer?
I would tend to start my evening with beer of some kind these days, probably craft beer, IPA. But I'm not one who sticks to beer alone, so I guess it runs in my DNA. Probably both my parents were Scottish, so I've got to um, I guess a touch of a fondness for whiskey probably running through me from that point.
Okay.
It wasn't always so.
Any particular liquor from Japan which is your favorite?
Shochu. I'd have to say shochu. It's an acquired taste for some, but the varieties which come from Kagoshima on the South Island of Kyushu, they tend to be probably my favorite for the sweet potato infusement.
Okay. How about let's talk back about Australia. You know, I was in Australia. I think you don't really drink shochu or other stuff which is available in Japan.
No.
What kind of drinks are more popular back in your country?
Oh, beer certainly. That tends to be brought by the 24 slab pack. Otherwise,
I got it. Yeah.
yeah, it's a slab of beer.
Yeah.
Wine, um, that can be as cheap as $3, $4 a bottle. Anything stronger than that tends to have an alcohol tax applied and becomes stupidly expensive. A bottle of whiskey, for example, will cost 3 times that amount in Australia than it would for here, even an average bottle. So, price difference wise, there's that to consider. But Australian people do drink a lot of wine. Price wise, it's the option to go. Beer, of course, craft beer. Craft beer is taking off in Australia now. There's some microbreweries everywhere.
Yeah.
I noticed that when I went back for my Christmas vacations, so on and so forth. Obviously, not so much these days because of the COVID situation.
Yeah. Yeah, I do have a lot of friends who do live in Australia. Most of them are Indians, and they are really enjoying their life back in Australia. Recently, there has been a lot of increase especially about when we talk about immigrants, especially from China or India. Probably you left Australia way back long, you know. So when was your last time when you were back home?
That was for, I guess you could say, personal reasons back in February 2020.
Yeah,
That was just before the shutters literally came down.
yeah. So did you see a big change about the immigration stuff? Like, were there more Asians or Indians, Pakistani or whatever Europeans compared to when you first left Australia?
Um, it's hard to say as far as I've known. Since growing up and so on, Australia's always been a multicultural country. I've not really noticed any big distinguishing difference at the moment. Uh,
Okay.
it's always been that way. We've had people coming from all over the world, from everywhere.
Yeah. So, like me and you, we both are immigrants in Japan. So, my last
Yeah.
question would be about immigration. Uh, what do you feel about like immigration? So, before I ask you this question, let me give you one example. For example, a lot of people from various countries, doesn't matter which country they belong, some people they hate immigrants,
Hmm.
you know. But you and me, we both are immigrants in Japan. So, what's your perspective about immigrants?
Well, as you said, immigration is a matter of perspective. And you might be the national of one country and an immigrant in the next, but there are those who are anti-immigration and think immigrants are the source of all their evils. But for me, I think as long as an immigrant is making an effort to be acceptable to that country, and obey the laws, pay their taxes, then it's not really an issue. It's those who refuse to fit in, those who stay on the margins and don't assimilate, those who remain apart and something other. I guess they are the factor which gives, I guess you could say, a perceived stigma to immigration.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And before we wrap up this interview, um, I want you ask. I want to ask you a particular question. It's like
Sure.
there are a lot of people who might be interested. They might be Europeans, Indian, Asian, or wherever they are from. They might be keen to come to Japan. And could you share some of your experience being in Japan? And what would you recommend to someone who is keen to come to Japan? What should he keep in his mind, or what should he should consider before he comes to this country?
Whatever you do, wherever you are here, keep an open mind. As soon as you think you're starting to understand the culture, think again. It's going to come right back around, smack you on the head, and surprise you. Uh, you'll learn. You'll have your perceptions torn apart, and you'll literally have to start afresh with whatever you thought you knew. I would suggest learning the language as much as you can about it before you come here. A lot of people, they come here, they don't know anything, they get stuck into a certain facet of English teaching, and they never learn, and they're reliant on everyone else to handle their communication for them. And as a result, they never move forward, they're at a disadvantage whenever conflict arises. They depend on others all the time, so I would suggest if you're thinking about coming to Japan, learn the language. The earlier the better, and preferably before you come, that'll just make things way easier.
I totally agree with you, and those were really very wise words for people who want to come to Japan. But before we wrap up this interview, there might be a lot of guys watching from Australia, or your friends or your family members, or in general. Would you love to give some message to them?
Sure. I guess to my fellow Aussies and family, it sucks we can't meet at the moment because of how things are internationally, but I hope that's going to change at some point in the future and some facet of normality will return. I refuse to use the word new normal, that's bullcrap. But I will say, and I hope that some of the old normal, as much as possible, is going to return and we can just go back to how things were and get on with our lives again. And hope to see all you guys again soon.
Thank you very much for your time, bro, today. And I
welcome.
do appreciate you came from such a long distance and you spared some time to get interviewed. So in the end, I would really appreciate in Japanese, how do you say, "Otsukaresama desu"? Thank you very much. And I felt really good interviewing you. And in the future, if I get chance, I will try to make another video about you, about your writing work and other stuff what you are into.
Yeah,
But
sounds like a plan.
thank you very much for today.
You're welcome, Harry.
All right, bye bye. So that was my very good friend from Australia, and I do hope that you enjoyed his video. And I will be back about him with another video after a couple of weeks. We're gonna talk about his writing and what else he do love doing in Japan. So until then, stay tuned, keep watching my videos, and do comment if you need some special content. I'll make a video about it. So stay safe. I'll be back with another video. Until then, goodbye. Sayonara.